was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that made time feel thick and slow. Tom Hendricks had been working on Station Kepler 7 for almost 3 years now, fixing broken ships and keeping the place running. He was good at what he did, fixing machines. Machines didn't talk back. They didn't need anything except maintenance and care, which made them easier to understand than people. He was in the cargo bay when he heard it. It sounded like wind chimes but softer. Strange. Tom looked up from the fuel injector he'd been cleaning and listened. There it was again, a chirping noise, almost musical, coming from somewhere near the storage containers. He set down his tools and walked toward the sound, his boots making heavy footsteps on the metal floor. The old freighter they'd brought in yesterday was parked against the far wall. Traders had dumped a bunch of cargo there and left it for Tom to deal with. He'd dealt with a lot of junk in his time on this station, but he'd never heard anything quite like this sound. It was alive, that much he knew. Tom opened the main freight container carefully. Inside was the usual mess: crates, equipment, spare parts scattered everywhere. He moved boxes aside, checking corners, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. Then he saw movement near the engine block at the back. There was something there. Something small and glowing. When Tom got closer, he could make out the shape. It was a creature no bigger than a kid, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. The color kept changing, blues and greens flowing across its surface like it was alive and breathing through its skin. The creature was curled up tight against the engine block, trying to make itself small, trying to hide. Tom had seen alien species before. Station Kepler 7 got all kinds of visitors. But he'd never seen anything like this up close. The creature's skin was pulsing with soft light, and Tom realized it was scared. The way it was squeezed into that corner, trembling slightly, told him everything he needed to know about fear. Fear looked the same on every creature in the galaxy, apparently. "Hey buddy," Tom said quietly. He kept his voice calm and low, the same way he talked to nervous animals back on Earth when he was a kid. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature looked up at him, and Tom saw what might have been eyes, or at least the place where eyes should be. Then something strange happened. Words appeared in his mind. Not heard through his ears, but just there in his thoughts. "Please don't hurt me." Tom stood very still. He understood what was happening. Telepathy. He'd read about it. Some alien species could do it. But reading about it was different from experiencing it. Someone was literally inside his head talking to him. "Okay," Tom said out loud, though he wasn't sure if that mattered. "I'm not going to hurt you. What's your name?" The creature uncurled slightly. Its skin pulsed with different colors now, still scared but maybe a little less scared. The thought came into Tom's mind again, but this time it felt almost like a voice, young and small and uncertain. "I am Kes. Are you a father?" Tom wasn't ready for that question. It hit him like a punch to the stomach, completely unexpected and completely painful. He had to sit down on one of the cargo crates because his legs suddenly didn't want to hold him up. He'd had a daughter once. Her name was Rebecca. She'd been 8 years old when the fever came. It was fast. 1 week she was healthy, the next week she was gone. That was 6 years ago now. Tom had left Earth after that, couldn't handle being on a planet that had let his daughter die. He came to the space station because out here, surrounded by machinery and repairs and problems he could actually fix, he could pretend the pain didn't exist. "No," Tom said quietly. "I'm not a father anymore." The small creature, Kes, moved closer. Its color was dimming, the blues and greens getting darker, less bright. It looked smaller now, somehow more fragile. Vulnerable. "Why do you ask?" Tom said, his voice rough. The answer came into his mind slowly, like Kes was picking each word carefully. The humans at the colony spoke of fathers. Beings who protect and teach. Beings who stay with their young and help them survive. I have no such thing. The collective raised me, but the collective is not the same as what you call a father. When the colony was evacuated, when they left me behind, I understood this. I understood that I was alone in a way that collective beings never should be alone. I have been alone in this cargo for 3 days now. I am cold. I am hungry. I am afraid. Could you fix that for me? Could you be what the humans call a father?" Tom looked at the small glowing creature in front of him, and something inside him that had been broken for 6 years suddenly stirred. Not healed, but maybe, just maybe, ready to try again. Tom brought Kes to his small quarters on the station. It wasn't much. A bedroom, a kitchen area, a living space with a window that looked out at the stars. But it was clean and it was warm and it was safe. He'd spent 3 years making it feel like home, even though he'd never quite managed that before Kes arrived. The first thing Tom did was give Kes food. Real food, not the synthetic stuff that most aliens could survive on. He made soup, simple chicken broth with vegetables. His grandmother's recipe, the one thing he'd kept from Earth. Kes didn't have a mouth exactly, but he had an opening that could consume nutrients. He drank the soup carefully, and his skin brightened from pale green to a healthier shade of blue. Thank you, Kes thought at him. I did not know I was this hungry. After Kes had rested, Tom did something he hadn't done in years. He sat down at his computer terminal and started researching. He wanted to understand what Kes was, what the Vex were, how they worked, where they came from. The database on Station Kepler 7 wasn't huge, but it had information about most known species. Tom found files on Vex biology, culture, reproduction. The more he read, the more confused he became. According to the information, Vex didn't have individual families. They didn't have mothers and fathers. Instead, they had something called a collective pool, a place where genetic material was combined and young Vex were developed together. When they reached maturity, they were raised by the entire hive mind collectively. Every Vex was connected to every other Vex through a telepathic link. They thought together, acted together, believed together. The database described individual family bonds among the Vex as inefficient and primitive. It said that Vex society had evolved beyond the need for what humans called love or personal attachment. They had logic. They had the collective consciousness. They didn't need anything else. Yet here was Kes, a young Vex who wanted exactly what the database said Vex didn't need. A father. Someone to care about him individually. Someone to teach him things just because he was important. Tom closed the computer and looked at Kes, who was resting on the couch in Tom's living area. The young alien was glowing softly, a peaceful yellow color, calmer than he'd been in days. Over the next few weeks, something strange started happening. Tom found himself teaching Kes things. Not just survival stuff but human things. He taught Kes about Earth. About rain and oceans and mountains. About music and art and stories. About why humans did things that didn't make logical sense, like keeping pets or drawing pictures or sitting quietly just to think about nothing in particular. Kes absorbed everything like he'd been waiting his whole life to learn it. They spent hours in the repair bay together. Tom showed Kes how plasma conduits worked, explaining the science in simple terms. Kes understood it quickly. His alien mind was sharp and logical. But what surprised Tom was that Kes wanted to understand why things worked, not just how. He asked questions. He wanted to know the purpose behind every system. Why do you spend so much time explaining? Kes asked one day as they worked on a damaged engine block. The collective would simply transfer knowledge directly. No teaching needed. No questions needed. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead. Because when I teach you, I get to see you learn. I get to watch you figure things out. That's worth something to me, Kes. It's not just about getting information into your head. It's about sharing something between us. Kes's skin pulsed with confusion. I do not understand this. You will, Tom said, and he kept teaching. As the weeks passed, Kes started telling Tom about his life before the station. About the collective. About the evacuation when the colony came under attack. About how Kes had gotten separated from the main group and left behind. The collective had assumed he was dead. They'd moved on, their hive minds simply deleting him from their shared consciousness like he'd never existed. I was expendable, Kes said quietly one evening. To the collective, I was simply a body among billions. When I was lost, it was like losing a single drop of water in an ocean. They did not mourn. They did not search. They simply continued. Tom understood that kind of loneliness. He'd felt it for 6 years after Rebecca died. But something was changing in Kes. The young alien was becoming more curious about individual things. He cared about Tom specifically, not just about surviving. He asked about Tom's past, his feelings, his life. He wanted to know what Tom thought about things, not just what was logically correct. One evening, as they sat watching the stars through the window, Kes turned to Tom. His skin was glowing a warm, hopeful gold. You could be my father, Kes said into Tom's mind. If you wanted to. I understand now what that means. It means someone who cares about me. Someone who teaches me. Someone who chooses to stay even when it would be easier to leave. I think I want that. I think I need that. Tom felt something break open in his chest, just like it had that first day in the cargo bay. But this time it didn't hurt as much. This time it felt like healing. Yeah, kid, Tom said quietly. I think I'd like that too. Commander Rachel Torres ran the station with the kind of precision that came from 20 years in space operations. She knew every system, every regulation, every protocol. When the life support logs showed an extra person in Tom Hendrix's quarters, she noticed immediately. She always noticed. Rachel called Tom into her office on a Tuesday morning. The office was small and neat, with a view of the docking bay through a reinforced window. Tom knew this wasn't going to be a casual conversation the moment he walked in and saw Rachel's expression. "We need to talk about the alien in your quarters," Rachel said without preamble. She gestured for Tom to sit. "I've been reviewing the logs. You brought something aboard 3 weeks ago. Something that's not registered in our system. Something that's consuming resources." Tom took a breath. He'd known this was coming eventually. You couldn't hide a second person on a space station forever. "His name is Kes. He's Vex. He was left behind during an evacuation and he was starving. I couldn't just leave him." Rachel leaned back in her chair. She wasn't angry exactly, but she was serious. "Do you understand what you've done? You've violated Protocol 7. No unregistered aliens on the station without proper documentation and quarantine procedures. I'm not trying to be difficult here, Tom, but you put this entire station at risk." "He's not dangerous," Tom said. "You don't know that," Rachel replied. "That's the point. We have procedures for a reason. Safety. Order. We can't just have people bringing random aliens into the station because they feel sorry for them." Before Tom could respond, Rachel's communication system beeped. She answered it, listened for a moment, then her face went tight. She looked at Tom. "That was the Vex Collective. They're demanding we return the alien immediately. They're calling his presence here a violation of interspecies agreements. They're also saying something about him being defective." The word hit Tom hard. Defective. Within hours, the news spread through Station Kepler 7. People had opinions about it, and most of them weren't in Tom's favor. Some people genuinely believed Kes might be dangerous. Others thought Tom was being irresponsible, risking everyone's safety for some weird alien kid. A few people started avoiding Tom in the corridors, afraid that whatever was wrong with Kes might be contagious. But not everyone felt that way. Dr. Henry Chin, the station's physician, came to see Tom in the repair bay. Henry was a good man, practical, intelligent, and fair. He'd examined Kes when Tom finally brought him forward. "For what it's worth," Henry said, "that kid is the healthiest young alien I've ever seen. Whatever you're doing, it's working. His neural patterns are stable. His physical health is excellent. If this is defective, I'd like to see what normal looks like." There was also Lisa Park, who worked in communications. She'd been interested in Kes's telepathic abilities and had spent time learning how he communicated. She told Tom that Kes was one of the most intelligent beings she'd ever talked to. "The thing everyone doesn't understand," Lisa said, "is that Kes isn't defective because he has feelings. He's actually better because he has feelings. He thinks differently. He approaches problems from angles that pure logic wouldn't consider." But the pressure kept building. Rachel had to file reports. The Vex Collective kept sending messages demanding Kes's return. There were official complaints from crew members who thought the station was becoming too soft on alien integration. Then the fusion reactor started having problems. It started as small fluctuations in the power output. The engineering team couldn't figure out what was causing it. They ran diagnostic after diagnostic. Everything looked fine on paper, but the reactors kept stuttering. Power to different sections of the station would cut out randomly. It was like the system had a ghost in it, something wrong that the computer couldn't see. After 3 days of problems, Rachel called an emergency meeting. The station's chief engineer, a man named David Reeves, was frustrated and exhausted. "We've checked everything," David said. "The system is working correctly according to all measurements. But it's not. The readings don't match reality. I don't know what's happening." Tom raised his hand. "Let me take a look." "With Kes." Rachel hesitated. But she was desperate. The whole station was starting to lose power randomly. If this kept up, people could get hurt. She nodded. Tom and Kes worked through the night in the engineering section. Kes moved through the systems with Tom, learning how they connected, how they worked together. Then around 3 in the morning, Kes stopped. "There," Kes said, pointing to a cooling line that looked perfectly normal. "That section is not truly cold. The sensors lie. There is a cascade happening. The cooling system is failing slowly, and the sensors cannot detect it because they were calibrated incorrectly during the last maintenance cycle." David checked the cooling line. Kes was right. There was microscopic fracturing in the pipe, barely visible, but it was causing the cooling system to fail by degrees. Without proper cooling, the fusion reactors couldn't function properly. It was a chain reaction that pure computer analysis had missed because the initial problem was too small to register. They fixed it. Within hours, the station's power stabilized completely. Rachel called Tom and Kes into her office again. This time she wasn't tense. She actually looked thoughtful. Whatever Kess is, Rachel said slowly, defective isn't the right word. That kid solved a problem we couldn't. He saw something no computer caught. I don't know what that means exactly. But it means something. She looked at Tom directly. I'm going to file a report with the Vex Collective. I'm going to tell them that Kess is staying. And if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with me. For the first time in weeks, Tom felt like maybe they actually had a chance. The Vex Collective vessel arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was massive, a ship that looked like it was made of living metal, organic and strange. Tom watched from the observation deck as it docked with Station Kepler 7. He felt Kess's anxiety through their telepathic connection, like a ripple of fear across his mind. They're coming to take me back, Kess thought at him. Not if I can help it, Tom replied. When the Vex delegation entered the station, they brought with them a presence that felt heavy. There were 5 of them, researchers with equipment and measuring devices. And there was the Elder. The collective called him Convergence of 7, though that wasn't really a name so much as a designation. He was older than the others, his movements deliberate and precise. When he looked at Tom and Kess, there was no judgment in his expression. There was just observation. Pure, logical observation. Rachel set up a meeting room. The Vex researchers began their work immediately, bringing instruments that beeped and hummed, devices that measured Kess's neural patterns, his reaction times, his cognitive processing speed. They watched him work in the repair bay. They recorded his conversations with Tom. They took notes on everything. Tom sat across from Convergence of 7 in the conference room. The Elder had asked to speak with him alone. Through a translation device they could communicate, though something was always lost in the translation between human speech and Vex telepathy. Your attachment to this young Vex is unconventional, Convergence of 7 said. His voice came through the speaker device in perfect English, but emotionless and flat. We do not understand it. It violates efficiency protocols. Individual bonds weaken collective function. This is scientific fact among our people. Tom leaned forward. He'd been thinking about what he wanted to say for days. You see emotion as weakness. I get that. Your whole society is built on logic and efficiency. But look at what Kess has become. Look at what he can do. We are looking, the Elder replied. His cognitive processing is slightly above average. His problem-solving skills are adequate. Nothing remarkable from a purely logical standpoint. That's because you're measuring the wrong things, Tom said, his voice steady. Kess doesn't just think faster than other Vex. He thinks differently. When the station's reactor was failing, your computers couldn't find the problem. Kess found it. Do you know why? Because he wasn't just using logic. He was using intuition. He was thinking about what could go wrong, not just what the data said should be happening. Convergence of 7 was silent for a moment. His translation device hummed softly. Intuition is unreliable. It is the source of inefficiency. Sometimes, Tom admitted. But sometimes it's brilliant. That's the thing about emotion and connection. They're unpredictable. They're messy. But they drive innovation. They drive people to try things that pure logic would never suggest. Tom stood up and started pacing, his frustration building. Look, I'm just going to be honest with you. Humanity wouldn't be here if we didn't have families. If we didn't have fathers and mothers willing to do whatever it takes to protect their children. We've survived wars, famines, diseases, all because we love each other. That love, that emotional bond, it makes us willing to take risks, to work harder, to innovate, to adapt. Love is a chemical reaction, Convergence of 7 said. Oxytocin and dopamine creating the illusion of connection. Maybe, Tom said. But that chemical reaction has made humanity the most adaptable species in known space. That chemical reaction is what made me keep Kess alive when logic would have said to report him and move on. That chemical reaction is what makes Kess want to learn and grow and be better. It's not weakness. It's power. Tom sat back down, looking directly at the Vex Elder. Your collective is efficient. I'll give you that. You all think together, act together, never waste time on disagreement. But you're also predictable. You solve problems the same way every time. You can't adapt to truly new situations because you're all bound to the same logic. Kess can. Because he has something to care about. He has someone to care about. That changes everything. For a long moment, Convergence of 7 didn't respond. The translation device remained silent. Tom could see the Elder's eyes, or what passed for eyes, moving back and forth processing something. Thinking something. The data is incomplete, Convergence of 7 finally said. We would need to observe Kess for an extended period. to measure the long-term effects of this emotional bonding on his intellectual development and his practical capabilities. Tom felt hope flare in his chest. How long? 1 solar cycle, the elder replied. 1 year. We will document everything. We will measure his growth. If his development truly exceeds what we would expect from standard Vex maturation, then we must reconsider our understanding of what we call deficiency. And if it doesn't? Tom asked. Then the young one will return to the collective, and we will study how the emotional attachment has affected his neural structure. Either way, we will learn something. It wasn't perfect, but it was hope. Tom nodded. Okay. 1 year. I can work with that. Convergence of 7 turned slightly. You should know, human, that this decision will be controversial among my people. We have believed in the efficiency of the collective for 10,000 years. You are asking us to question everything. I know, Tom said. That's why it's important. The year passed faster than Tom expected. Every day, Convergence of 7 and his team took measurements. They recorded everything Kes did, every problem he solved, every innovation he came up with. They watched him grow. They watched him learn. They watched him become something that pure Vex logic said shouldn't be possible. By the end of the year, the data was undeniable. Kes's problem-solving abilities had increased by 40%. His capacity for creative thinking had surpassed 95% of standard Vex development. His neural connections were more complex, more interconnected, more capable of making intuitive leaps. The emotional bond with Tom had done something extraordinary to his mind. When Convergence of 7 presented his findings to the Vex collective back home, there was resistance. There was skepticism. There were arguments about whether emotion was truly beneficial or just a distraction. But the data was solid. The results were clear. The Vex collective made a decision that shocked everyone, especially the Vex themselves. They granted Kes a new official status, Cultural Exchange Liaison. He would remain on Station Kepler 7, living with Tom, continuing to grow and learn and develop his emotional connections. In exchange, Tom and Kes would work with the Vex collective to study the long-term effects of emotional bonding on intelligence and problem-solving. They would document everything, share their findings, and help the Vex understand this new dimension of existence. It was a compromise, but it was also a beginning. The adoption ceremony happened on a quiet evening in the station's common room. Tom had never been one for big celebrations, but Commander Torres insisted on making it official and public. People came. Not everyone on the station, but the people who mattered. Rachel Torres, Henry Chin, Lisa Park, David Reeves, Dr. Patricia Howard, who worked in biological research and had become fascinated with Kes's development, and several crew members who had quietly supported Tom and Kes from the beginning. Tom stood in front of them and Kes stood beside him. The young Vex skin was glowing a brilliant gold, so bright it almost hurt to look at directly. That gold color meant joy, Tom had learned. It meant happiness and hope and excitement all mixed together. I want to say, Tom began, his voice rough with emotion, that when Kes first asked me to be his father, I didn't think I could do it. I thought I'd lost that right when my daughter Rebecca died. I thought I was broken. But Kes showed me that broken things can be fixed. Sometimes they become stronger in the places where they were damaged. He looked at Kes. I'm going to officially adopt you. Not because Vex society requires it, but because I want everyone to know that you're mine. You're my son. And I'm proud to be your father. Kes stepped forward, and through the telepathic connection they developed, Tom felt the young Vex's emotion, pure, overwhelming love. But Kes also spoke the words out loud in careful English that he'd been practicing for months. I am honored to call you father, Kes said. You taught me that being different is not being broken. You taught me that caring about someone makes you stronger, not weaker. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. People were smiling. Some of them were crying. Tom felt tears running down his own face and he didn't care who saw them. Months after the adoption, something unexpected happened. Word spread through the station about Kes. About what he was capable of. About how emotional development could enhance intelligence and creativity. Young aliens started arriving. Some came with their parents. Some came alone, seeking guidance and mentorship. Tom's repair bay transformed into something nobody had planned for. It became a classroom. There was Zix, a young Andrillian hatchling who didn't understand why he cared about his siblings when his species was supposed to be solitary. There was Ren, a hybrid being who didn't fit into any single species category and felt lost. There was a young crystalline entity who was learning what it meant to perceive beauty. There were a dozen others, all different, all seeking something their own cultures couldn't provide. Tom and Kes taught them together. Tom shared human wisdom, stories, lessons, the hard-won knowledge that came from centuries of human struggle and growth. Kes shared his own experience of learning to feel, to connect, to care about individuals rather than collectives. Connection and logic are not opposites, Kes would explain to them, his skin pulsing with soft blues and greens. They are partners. Logic tells you how things work. Connection tells you why you should care. Together, they make you whole. The station had become something different than it was before. More vibrant. More alive. Tom noticed it in the way people interacted with each other now. There was more patience. More kindness. The discovery that emotion and connection could actually enhance capability rather than diminish it had changed something fundamental in how the crew approached their work. One evening, Tom stood in the observation deck watching the stars. Kes glided up beside him, his skin glowing a warm, peaceful blue. The young Vex had grown taller in the years since they'd met. More confident. More sure of himself. "Come on, buddy," Tom said, using the nickname he'd given Kes years ago. "Time for dinner. I'm making your favorite." "The soup with the roots and the protein?" Kes asked, his skin brightening with anticipation. "That's the one," Tom confirmed. As they walked through the corridors of Station Kepler 7 toward Tom's quarters, Tom thought about Rebecca. He thought about the grief that had consumed him for 6 years. He thought about how he'd thought that grief meant he was done being a father. But he'd been wrong. Love didn't die. It just found new places to grow. Sometimes a father's heart could heal by opening up again, by being brave enough to care about someone new. "Thank you for finding me," Kes said quietly as they walked. "Thank you for fixing what was broken." Tom reached over and placed his hand on Kes's glowing shoulder. "Thank you for letting me." And for the first time in years, Tom smiled like he really meant it. Not the tired smile of someone surviving, but the genuine, deep smile of someone who had found purpose again. Someone who had found love again. In the warm light of Station Kepler 7, with his Vex son beside him and a classroom full of young aliens learning what it meant to connect with each other, Tom Hendricks had finally found his way home.